opens lines for your queen and bishop, immediately challenging central influence. Controlling the center with equal force establishes immediate symmetrical tension. Developing the knight here readies an attack on the center and prepares for castling, asserting a solid presence. Developing the knight symmetrically solidifies the pawn center and prepares for active piece play. Challenging black's central pawn structure directly intensifies the pawn battle across the board. Solidifying the d5 pawn's defenses, this choice prepares for the thematic pawn thrusts and potential central pawn exchanges inherent to this queen's gambit declined setup. Simplifying the center opens up lines for your pieces to develop actively. Reclaiming the center with the pawn solidifies black's pawn structure and prepares to develop pieces into active squares. Developing the knight towards the center solidifies piece coordination, preparing to contest the d5 pawn's central influence. Developing the knight here solidifies black's central pawn structure, preparing for potential queenside expansion and central counterplay. Asserting control over central squares and preparing development, this bishop now eyes the crucial e7 pawn. Solidifying the center while preparing for development, this pawn advance neatly tucks itself behind its knight. Solidifying the center and preparing to develop the kingside minor pieces, this cautious step avoids immediate complications and prioritizes sound piece placement. Developing the bishop to its natural square prepares for castling and reinforces control of the central dark squares. Establishing control over the central dark squares, the bishop now eyes the kingside for potential attacking opportunities. A natural consolidation, tucking the king away safely amidst the developing pieces. This subtle pawn advance prevents the bishop's uncomfortable outpost and prepares a comfortable retreat for the king's knight should it be challenged. Developing the bishop to d7 anchors the queenside and prepares for potential queenside expansion, while keeping the diagonal open for the other bishop. Castling unlocks the king's safety while preparing rook activity, a classic defensive maneuver. Expanding queenside space defensively prepares for potential pawn advances and supports the queenside knight. Establishing robust control over the open c-file, white prepares to challenge black's queenside structure. Preparing to potentially reposition the bishop to g6 or h5, aiming for better diagonal influence and challenging white's queenside control. Shifting the bishop to b1 prepares potential queenside expansion and supports a future advance of the b-pawn, while also subtly eyeing the d6 square. Seeking counterplay on the kingside, this knight embarks on an ambitious, albeit somewhat exposed, journey towards white's queenside defenses. Repositioning the bishop to a more active diagonal, aiming to exploit the open queenside files and potentially pressure black's queenside pawn structure. Challenging white's central grip, this pawn thrust aims to liberate black's pieces and create counterplay on the kingside, a bold initiative. Launching a knight to the rim looks odd, but it aims to reroute to better squares and support pawn advances. Recentering the bishop to d6 aims to regroup for potential kingside pressure and solidify the pawn chain, though it concedes some initiative. Knight rerouting to a strong outpost, aiming to dominate the queenside pawns and create attacking potential. Sacrificing the bishop opens diagonal lines for your queen and rooks, aiming to exploit the exposed white-king position. Recapturing the knight clears the way for your queenside pawns and prevents black's knight from becoming a persistent thorn. Relinquishing the bishop to gain a foothold on the central light squares, black now prepares to activate the queen, aiming for improved coordination and potential pressure along the e-file. Asserting queenside pressure, this maneuver aims to exploit the pawn chain weakness and potentially create attacking avenues. Preparing for a pawn storm on the kingside, a bold assertion of central influence or simply a strategic repositioning. Provoking a pawn storm, white aims to disrupt black's kingside harmony and exploit the open lines that may arise from this aggressive advance. Opening this diagonal creates immediate tactical skirmishes and invites a fight for central control. Opening the H-file unleashes potent attacking potential against Black's castled king. The knight's retreat to F6 repositions the defender, consolidating the kingside pawn structure and preparing for potential counterplay. Unleashing the kingside pawns seizes the initiative, creating immediate diagonal threats and opening lines for attack. Black aims to free the queenside and challenge White's spatial advantage by creating counterplay on the queenside. Sacrificing a pawn to open lines and disrupt Black's queenside harmony is a bold, aggressive choice. This rook now exerts pressure on the queenside, aiming to disrupt White's pawn structure and open attacking avenues. Sacrificing the queen for 2 pawns, and an open file grants White considerable attacking momentum. Unleashing immediate central pressure, Black ignites a dynamic pawn confrontation, aiming to shatter White's harmonious piece placement and reclaim lost initiative. A dramatic pawn sacrifice is underway, opening up the E-file and creating immediate tactical fireworks for the coming storm. A bold counterstrike. Black reclaims the pawn and reopens lines for immediate counterplay against the exposed White king. Unleashing the pawn chain, White dramatically opens lines, risking their own king's safety for immediate central disruption. A daring queen recapture, plunging into a complex tactical skirmish, hoping to exploit White's exposed king. Sensing immediate danger, White redirects their queen to a more active, defensive square, seeking to prevent Black's knight from further infiltrating White's territory. Sensing a clear path to disrupt the king's safety, this move forces White into immediate defensive preparations, potentially sacrificing material for initiative. Securing the king's escape route after the aggressive pawn push provides crucial breathing room. Plunging the rook into the enemy position ignites a desperate race against White's queen. Reclaiming the open file offers a crucial defensive anchor, preventing further encroachment by Black's pieces. A tactical retreat to safety after the king's vulnerability, now aiming to coordinate pieces and exploit the open file. Unleashing the rook here opens lines, but at the cost of a suddenly exposed king. Unleashing a queen sacrifice to disrupt White's king's shelter, aiming to exploit the weakened kingside and potentially force a draw or even win material. Injecting immediate kingside pressure, this audacious pawn thrust challenges the enemy queen and opens a direct assault line. Seeking sanctuary, the knight retreats from the menacing pawn wall, hoping to regroup for a counterattack. Unleashing a pawn storm offers a dynamic counter to Black's aggression, creating decisive attacking chances. Opening the H-file now seems to unleash more danger for your king than any potential gain. Sacrificing the bishop opens the diagonal to Black's exposed monarch, creating a sudden and fierce mating attack.